Hello, this is a book review. Interesting ideas, some important marks that I found in this book, Capital in the 21st Century. Overall, I'll start with the review. Overall, I'll probably give this book 3 stars, as it didn't do the best job writing to the average audience, so there is a lot of jargon. Some more complicated, some less. But I think it could be simplified, which he didn't try. Other than that, it's too long because there's a lot of names and a lot of unnecessary information that he could definitely drop. So other than that, it's too long. It's probably more than 20 hours worth of listening. So it's quite a lot. So it could definitely be shorter. And again, some points he didn't have to make them, or they were too long. But overall, he did do a very good job of giving a comprehensive idea of the economy, the history of the economy a little bit, a lot of about inequality. So some very interesting topics. I'll go more through them right now in the notes. But overall, again, 3 stars. I might want to go back to this book, especially to my notes in the future. But I probably want to listen to this book again sometimes in the future. All right, let's see. First one is, there is a claim that inequality follows a bell curve. So there is, according to one theory, inequality also works like a bell curve, which is like when you're in the bottom, exactly how it goes. So when you're on the top, that's the average. So it's always go like that. It's ups and downs, and it also depends where you on the graph can determine a lot of things. Unlike GDP, national income reduced the depreciation of goods, which is around 10% of GDP. So national income, we do not calculate the depreciation of goods. So that's somewhat more real of GDP. It's a better measurement in some way. Growth is growing at 3% while population grow in 1%. So normal average growth is about, of countries, I think it's about average is 3%, while population only grows 1%. So there is like little problems about how exactly do we compensate, how we jump from 1 to 3. Probably also it's mostly about developed countries, I guess. Next one is, in countries with higher immigration, people tend to inherit less money. It's pretty clear why, because they don't have parents. They immigrated to that place, so they less prone to leave any inherency, which is, I think he also says that that's the United States is one of those states in which there is a lot of immigration, so people inherit less money here. Most time the growth rate of a country is less than 1%. The outliers are countries who catch up more to more developed countries. So the average growth rate of a developed country is about 1%. We always strive to go higher than that. The outliers, the only countries that are earning more, are countries that are catching up. In our case is China, for example, or many of the developed countries. If they actually develop fast, they have 6 and 8 and 10%. In many cases, the extra rate of return in real estate is due to work need to be done. Otherwise, it's the same as bonds. Usually, people say, "Oh, you earn more on real estate." Usually means that you work more. Just work for this more. So you put in work. But without the work, if you calculate how much you pay, some kind of, like with air quotes, pay, because you don't pay, but you save money, but if you take that out of the calculation, that's going to be the same as bond, which is like about 2 to 3%, I think. That's the average. Capitalism might come to an end by a constant look for high returns which cannot be sustained based on the formula. So it has this formula, I currently forgot, but beta equals, I forgot exactly how the formula goes, but capitalism might come to an end because we always have higher returns, always look for higher returns, but there is no way to sustain this. It cannot go like that for a long time. It cannot continue. The rise of technology and the diffusion of knowledge enabled us to avoid a Marxist apocalypse. That's the problem of inequality. We always try to be more socialist, but the only reason why we were able to not go that way is due to technology and diffusion of knowledge, which there is more people can earn more money. But without it, we would be, according to him, in a Marxist apocalypse. Countries with higher equality usually have egalitarian education. That's one component of countries with higher equality, is they have education, usually free education or something like that, so everyone can have it. So there is more equality, therefore. In the long term, increasing the minimum wage does not help. Education and technology is the solution. People always said, "Oh, raise the minimum wage, raise the minimum wage," but minimum wage is not the solution. Rather, education and technology is what drives growth or equality. Lower rates of inequality today in Europe is due to random events rather than any policy changes. That's what he claims. He has some evidence to support that they didn't do any significant policy changes. It's just random events that I think he lists them in the book. But what led them to have lower rates of inequality? The rise of middle class is what changed in the last few decades. They took some of the capital from the rich. So there is the rise of the middle class, and where they get their money is actually from the rich, the upper percentile. Increased lifespan cause decrease inherency. That's what's happening today. There is more, the lifespan increase right now, so people live longer, and that caused less decrease in inherency because they don't die yet, so people cannot take their money or their apartment, whatever. So there is less inherency. The 2 world wars have wiped clean most of wealth accumulation. People accumulate a lot of money. I think it's due to inflation. People lost, or just because other reasons, just like buildings crashing down and other reasons. People don't work, people die. So that wiped, what is said here, have wiped clean most of the wealth accumulation. 100 years ago, if you earn less than 20 times the average wage, you could not live good. High cost of everything. You must hire many people instead of doing daily chores. Dress cost few months of income. That's how much a dress cost, a few months of income, because everything was more slow. There was a lot of people needed to do small jobs. So for example, making a dress took months and a lot of people. But if you want to live comfortably, you had to have, like you live today in some way, you have to have like 20 people working for you. So you have to earn less than 20 times the average. You cannot live good if you have. So you need more than 20 times because you need to hire a lot of people. and everything was more costly. According to one prediction, in democracy, people will eventually abandon the inherent idea. You lose the property when you die. So that's a prediction which I think it has some merit. So according to what that prediction, and eventually, because this doesn't make sense, people just keep accumulating money, and eventually they just inherit it to their family. But people that way gets a lot of money, and that does not help for equality. So he thinks that eventually people will say this is no longer can go that way. When you die, that's it. You lose it. The return on large capital is larger than a small one, for the reason that more money can hire wealth management and more risk can be taken. So there is more returns if you have more capital. So $1 trillion or $1 billion versus $1 million, you can earn higher returns. The reason is you can hire wealth management, for example, or a better one, or take more risks because you have more money. So even if something is going wrong, you still have, but if something is going extremely good, you get it, which you might not take that risk if you have only 1 million, for example. Big universities have higher returns on their capital because of wealth management and economy of scale. So it's the same idea. Apparently universities have a lot of money, which they invest. Of course, big universities, and they have higher returns than the average return on money, on capital. And one of the reasons is for better management, wealth management, and economy of scale, which is the same idea of more risk can be taken. Everything you make it bigger sometimes will be more efficient. Not everything, but many. We are on the path to be owned by big pensions funds and billionaires as their capital grow and income, it's not growing at the same pace. So they have more and more, so growth, capital earn more and more money based on his formula, but income does not grow at the same pace. So they have more and more money, but we have less and less in some way, and eventually we will be owned by them. About 30% of GDP is being spent on social programs, which is a lot. You might think that we're not in a social countries, but we are social societies. But in some way, 30%, and it's only growing and growing. Then we'll already be spending on social programs such as helping people in various ways. In a society that strives for equality, where is the end? Do we need to provide travel and luxury items? So that's a good question he raises. So in society that strives for equality, when do we stop? When then we say, okay, equality is right here? Because a good question would be, what about travel? Is that equality? Should we strive for equality among travel, or about luxury? Everyone should get a Lexus, for example. Maybe this is equality. It's a good question. The top 1% has lower taxes than the rest. Why? Because they avoid taxes. I think there is it doesn't say that in the book, or maybe it is, but I don't remember. I don't think so. But Warren Buffett, once we always joked that he's paying less taxes than his secretary. So his secretary pays more. The reason is they invest that money. They have all sorts of way to avoid paying that. Legally, of course, but it's still avoiding. The race by countries for lower taxes caused decreased income from corporate and high earned income taxes. So because of that, they will race for the bottom. That's what we call it. Race for the bottom of taxes. So different countries try to lower taxes to entice companies and corporations to come into their countries. And what happened is that as a consequence, we earn less money. And high earned income taxes also, they go abroad. They all of a sudden live in Ireland. They have a company there, and we don't get those taxes. Taxing the rich means taxing their income will not produce a lot of money, since the average income of the rich are only about 5 million. The rest are in trust and similar. That's a very good point he makes. That was there is a lot of socialists, especially when I'm recording this. There is a lot of discussion about higher taxes for the wealthy. The problem is that they only earn about $5 million. So how much you can raise it for 70%? They talk about 70% income tax. The thing is that they don't. That's what they report. Which the rest of their money is in trusts or other things like that, which mean that they don't pay that much. So we need a different way. I think I have a note about it, but he offers taxes on capital versus just on anything, on real estate, on investments, on everything. Very small. I think he's talking about about 1.5 to 1% taxes on, or even one time. It's like a one-time tax on all taxes, which will make a lot of money, an outrageous amount. I don't remember. Let's see if we have something. If not, refer to the book. Debt of the first world countries in average is 90% of GDP, while third world countries have 30% of GDP. So that's the debt. So actually, third world countries have less debt than the rich countries, which is the first world countries, which is an interesting fact. Rising inflation is one of the ways countries can combat high debts. I didn't know that. That's a good point. And I was like, okay, this is not cool. Because what happens is when inflation raises, let's say the government took $100 billion loan, but if inflation even with let's say 50%, so now they took less money in some way. And in times of war, that's what happened in the past. He's talking about it in the book too, that especially in the two world wars, a lot of the debts, countries, especially he's talking about France, their debt went to zero because of inflation. They could pay that money extremely fast. A better description for, I think that's the last one, a better description for economics is political economy. He likes that better than economics, which is like a science in some way. He says because this is not a science, but this is not, it's not like psychology. So it's like somewhere in between. So it's not science, but it's not social science. So you like it political economy. So it's like some new term for economics. He likes that better. I think it's a good distinction between them, which in general, because politics has a lot to do with it. So that's a good description in my sense. That's it for notes. In general, again, that's like a 3-star. Get some good things. I haven't wrote a bunch because sometimes it's just too hard to write. It's a lot of numbers and it's not the best book to take notes. But in general, again, 3 stars. Just because it's too long and all what I said. And I will probably read that book in the future. Maybe I'll make another note. All right. Adios.